welcome to another one of Pat's Chats for Out of the Basement. I'm Patrick Gleason, and tonight I'm joined by Cat McDonald. How are
Hi.
you doing? And I understand you have your own company, Peach Garden Games.
Yes, it's just a little indie outfit, but I enjoy it. I'm having a good time.
Well, it's always good to see someone who's now. Did you have to self-publish or anything, or?
I do. I self-publish. I was gonna say everything, but I've got a couple releases coming up that are actually through other publishers as
Oh, very
well.
nice. Congratulations. So
Yes,
why don't you
very.
tell me a little bit about yourself first, the background,
Okay.
and what led up to Peach Garden Games.
Okay. So let's see. I had a friend in middle school who taught everyone within arm's reach how to play Dungeons and Dragons
Okay, yeah.
indiscriminately. So he would have people to play Dungeons and Dragons with on lunch breaks. So me, my sister, everyone we knew in middle school got roped into it, and it really stuck with me. Didn't stick with my kid sister, but I keep trying
Yeah.
to pull her back in as I'm a criminal. And that was like it was indiscriminate. It was just like, hey, everybody who is near me, come play Dungeons and Dragons.
All right. Now, was that second edition or third
That
or?
was that was third edition.
Okay.
That was third edition. Usually people think I'm younger than that. It was third edition going into 3.5.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I did play third ed. um I'm a fourth ed liker,
hmm
but
You're one of those
that's
rare ones that stands out.
the funny
It's.
thing is, if you ask game designers, most of them are fourth ed
Oh,
likers.
really? Okay.
Most of the ones I know are
Yeah.
4e defenders. I think because there's a lot of really excellent like design that went into that,
hmm
that somebody who does game design can
Appreciate it.
respect and appreciate.
Yeah. So what got you in, like, obviously playing, but what got you into game design then?
A different friend came up to me in high school one day and he said, I had a dream. And I'm like, neat. And he says, I had a dream that 15 strength was plus 15 and not plus 3. And I was like, that's bizarre.
Mhm.
Also, it's plus 2. But listen, it's been a grip. It's been a grip. And I realized it was wrong when I said it. And I'm like, okay, good for you. Nice dream. And he was like, I'm going to make my own system. And I'm like, good job, bud.
Mhm.
I'm cheering for you. I'm pulling them all the way. And then it was months later, he comes up to me and he's like, Sean keeps doing this annoying thing in the game I made. How do I stop him? And I'm like,
What was he doing?
he was just casting infinite small spells infinitely. And I was like, have you tried having some kind of limit on how many spells he can do? And from then on, I think there were a couple more times that my friend came up to me and was like, how do I stop my playtester from annoying me? And and then bit by bit, it went to I helped playtest. And that was when I really fell in love with playtesting. And then bit by bit, I started helping to design, and we brought some more people on, and we were Cabal Games. And
Hmm.
we just made the one game.
Yeah.
And this was one of those college starry-eyed projects. And then we stopped doing that. I forget why, but we kind of drifted off at any rate. And then I was working a graveyard shift surveillance job, bored
Ooh,
to
fun.
tears. And I was like, maybe I should start writing game again.
Mm.
Maybe I should write one, just me write it, just me by myself.
Yeah.
And that's where Heroic Chord came from. I've been working on that one for a good long time. And so I grabbed some friends to help me play test. That's Sword of Symphonies,
Yes.
our
Yeah.
many award-winning podcast, for which I was declared the king of host kings.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
I cannot take it seriously, regardless of how it's genuinely a delightful accolade to be declared best GM of an actual play. But like, I can't take myself seriously, so once the accolades applied to me, it loses all meaning. It's just my brain, I guess. But then I started self-publishing more games. I fell in love with small games during the pandemic, with
Mhm.
like little game jams, little solo games, little things. Peach Garden Games is a reference to one of my favorite stories of all time, because my favorite genre of anything is the ancient epic. So it is a reference to the ancient Chinese epic Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which I adore. And if anyone wants to talk to me about Three Kingdoms, please do that. My friends are boring.
Well, I was reading some of the ones there. I could see the epic myth that you have for it is a big influence in some of the games there.
Yeah, I love ancient epics because there's something first of all, there's something deeply revealing about an ancient epic. I translated Beowulf in college when I took Old English.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I name almost everything in Old English. The continent that heroic decor takes place on is called Amylte, which just means I will melt. It did. But
well, that's really good then. So like with the epic of I'm segue here.
Yeah.
With the epic of Beowulf, did you see the modern movie where they redid it in sort of not live, well, semi live action there?
Yeah, I did. Here's the thing about Beowulf is that it's so Old English that it's virtually impenetrable to a modern reader.
Mm-hmm.
A modern reader is like, why is half of this text people giving each other presents? But to the Old English audience, that was the good shit. That was like, yes, these like this king has all the stuff. He's got the rings, he's got the cups, he's got the shields, and these cool warriors, they're getting the rings, they're getting the cups. This is that's the great stuff for them. But to a modern reader, Beowulf is excruciating. And the ancient epic is always really indicative of the culture that told the story.
Yes.
Which is one of the things that I find so charming about them. Like, Romance of the Three Kingdoms is an ancient Chinese story. It was told by the ancient Chinese in ancient China about the things that mattered to them.
For them, yeah.
Same thing with Beowulf. So you're never going to see a modern, accurate retelling of Beowulf.
No.
Because to a modern English-speaking audience, those aren't the things that matter anymore. They do not care about the rings. Please shut up about the rings.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, there's like the Gilgamesh and all those ones, like they still resonate, and they're still being used to draw other movies, like as inspiration for other movies, just because there's a reason they've stuck around for thousands of years.
Right. There's something kind of essentially human, even though they are very much a product of the place and time they came from. There's also just like people want heroes. People want someone big and cool to admire. And that's kind of always been a feature of storytelling, even though we no longer care about how many rings the big cool guy got from the king.
No.
Like, we no longer care about the minor issue of etiquette that kept Guan Yu from leaving because Cao Cao avoided him so he couldn't say goodbye in person. What a jerk. Like, the entire list of ships and people on them from the beginning of Iliad, that was a crowd pleaser in Homer's day.
Yeah, nowadays, like, who cares? We don't care about all these minor people.
But like, back in the day, everyone was like, yeah, Ithaca, homeboy Odysseus represent. And they were really amped for that part.
I was going to say, it reminds me of like the modern, where the band says the name of this town. It's like, we're in. It's like,
I'm like, Electric Six used to come to Edmonton every year, and they opened one of their shows with, we went to Calgary and they do not know how to rock and roll there. And they said Edmonton does not know how to rock and roll. And we went nuts for that. We went absolutely bananas.
Well, yeah, anyone knows the Edmonton Calgary, rivalry. So, but again, that's what people do. Is like,
Exactly. It's just a crowd pleaser. It's a guaranteed crowd pleaser. So even though there are elements that are very cultural and very specific, there's still the notion that like, this is someone big and cool and impressive that I want to emulate and hear more about. And that's, you're right. That's something that Gilgamesh is someone we still care about.
Yes.
And like, paper wasn't invented when that story was first told.
And I mean, yes, I know there's been translations and stuff like that through the years, like Old Norse is like, we're not really sure we think this is what they meant.
Oh, yeah. There's so many words, and like even Beowulf is Old English, but it requires translation, and there are words in there that we're like, actually, we don't really know what a glacavif is,
but we're thinking it's this.
we're pretty sure Nikor is like a sea monster of some kind. Like
Yeah.
it's
So have you seen those YouTube ones where they have the people talking in Old English, and they're showing
no, I
old?
haven't.
There's one where it's like Old Norse and Old English are very closely related,
They are,
in the
yes.
trees, and then they're reading old like Shakespeare from the day, and it's like it's really interesting to hear it spoken that way,
Oh yeah.
and like but also it's like just the pronunciation's different too for
Yes.
things, and you're like, what? I think I know what he's saying because I've read Shakespeare, but I don't
Yeah.
remember.
And that's late Middle English too. Like
Yeah,
Anglo-Saxon sounds like German being spoken with a thick Scottish accent.
yeah.
It does not resemble modern English in most ways.
So some of the ones like tell me some of the games because I know you have a lot of games there.
I
Like you
like
have
to do them.
I was
I
trying to
like to
say
do them.
you have well the heroic sword, you
Heroic
have
Sword.
Tyrant's
Yes.
Dream,
Yes.
like then there's all those are the ones that are play together. So what's the difference between the play together and play alone games that you have?
Oh. So I got really into solo games during the pandemic because I couldn't meet with my in-person D&D group. So I found some single player role-playing games. And so I absolutely fell in love with the medium. It's so expressive and it's kind of on the fringe of indie TTRPGs. So you see a lot of very experimental stuff there, as well
Mhm.
as stuff that's like very genuine and expressive and meaningful. Not to say that like your classic game sitting around your table with your friends is not meaningful,
Yeah.
far from it, but like it's a lot closer to like writing fiction than which isn't my background is in fiction. I
Oh.
wrote and edited fiction for a long time. So there's something about that experience that's very soulful and very endearing to me, which is why I do write solo games pretty regularly.
Mhm.
My first one was Headless Guide for the Folklore Jam, because one of the rules of the Folklore Jam is that you have to write about your folklore. And that's a challenging thing, as you might know, for a Caucasian Canadian.
Yes, it's sort of like I have to go try genealogy and go back. Okay, well I have
Right.
some in this branch, so does that count as my?
Exactly. Because Caucasian Canadians are very alienated from their culture
Mhm.
because we perceive it as a default. So we don't see what makes us us.
Yeah, we hate
But
Americans.
yeah, we hate Americans. We love hockey and we drink a Caesar every now and again,
Yeah,
which my Americans find so upsetting.
yeah,
They hate it.
yeah.
They hate the concept of the Caesar. Suckers.
Clamato, what clam juice? What? No.
Yeah, my friend from Chicago refers to it as that horrible clam drink.
Yes, which
And
I can't blame them. I'm not a fan either.
no,
Yeah,
well,
but you're
it's
right.
part of our
There's
culture.
trying to think of something beyond Tim Hortons maple
Right.
syrup.
Like we struggle with that, especially Canadians, because like you talk to somebody whose parents were from abroad who lives in America and ask them what they're American.
Hmm.
Americans seem so much more willing to declare themselves Americans than we are. Like my family, Scottish. We've been here for 5 generations. Whereas
Yeah,
Canadian is maple syrup, but we're Scottish.
Scottish. Yeah.
It's weird to me. So I really struggled with this prompt until I found a book on my shelf that I bought at a used bookstore in Nanaimo years, decade ago, even called Blue Nose Magic. Because I was born in Halifax,
Oh, the Blue Nose ships. Yes.
and my a big chunk of my family trees in Peggy's Cove. So I was like, okay, there's a lot of myth and lore and superstition in this
Hmm.
book about the place I come from. So I wrote Headless Guide, which is a story about following a pirate's ghost to gold, and you have to maintain your silence because the stories say that if you speak, the treasure is lost.
Okay.
And so that was a really meaningful experience for me, and that was when I really fell in love with writing single player games.
Now, is this similar to, just so I can understand more, to the ones that had choose your own adventure sort of idea?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
It's the way this one goes is you lay out a series of cards and you like answer the prompts and you roll dice as it requires. Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas the play together games are kind of a classic one. Heroic Chord is my big adventure game. It's very fantasy. It's kind of a hopeful and cheerful. Well, I wouldn't say cheerful because there's a lot of really weird horror elements. But in the end, it's a game about people coming together and taking care of each other. I came here to win. I made with the cast of Sword of Symphonies.
I love that idea where it's
Oh my
like,
God,
you know,
it's so
you're
fun.
I'm part of Eurovision.
Yeah, it's just it's very one shotable. It's very pick up and play. I describe it as a party game. It's like, okay, we're gonna play a season of Project Runway or Top Chef or
Yeah,
Face Off, if you remember Face Off, the best reality TV show
sure.
ever.
Okay, so I keep thinking of the John Travolta Nicolas
No,
Cage
no,
movie.
no.
Sorry, sorry.
On the Space Channel, there used to be a reality show called Face Off, which was
Okay.
for Hollywood special effects makeup
Oh,
artists.
right. I think I saw. Yes. Okay.
Such a good show. I
Yeah.
watched it faithfully
And
every week, and
yeah.
now there's alas. But I Came Here to Win is meant to be kind of no prep. Sit down with your friends, be a bunch of big dramatic jerks. And I have fun every time I play it.
Well, that's good. And
Yeah.
then there's is the Dragons of, I know you said it's
Dragons of Amylte.
Amylte.
Yes. That is a kind of spin-off game of Heroic Chord. It's based on my deep, deep, deep love of the game Golden Sky Stories,
I'm not
which
feeling
is
that one.
it is a Japanese TTRPG where you play these adorable little animal children and you like help people and solve their problems and inject a little wonder into people's lives.
Okay.
It's just a sweet little game. It's a
Hmm.
sweet little game. And so Dragons of Amylte is about you're a baby shapeshifter and you are learning new shapes to take and you're learning more about the world and noodling around because you're a little noodly dragon. And so that's another one that's meant to be kind of rules light, low prep,
Mm-hmm.
chill game.
Okay. So I think it more like you're obviously your games aren't what they call crunchy. Like it's not like, 3.5 where it's like,
So few things are like 3.5 in that regard. And that's the fun thing about game design is I actually really like crunchy games. I'm working on one right now. And I'm working on I also did Blazing Hymn, which was a Lumen game. And Lumen is, how can I describe it? It's not granular. Like there's not a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But it is very mathematical. It's very crunchy. It's very tactical.
Okay.
So Lumen is a really fun rule set to work with. And I love Blazing Hymn. It's so fun. I'm working on expansion to it actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, nice.
It's called Blazing Hymn Lightbringer. Yes, I mean Satan. It's a good time.
So what are some of the inspirations you like besides obviously the Blue Nose? What are some, like, obviously a lot of Chinese and Asian myths and stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you studied
I
fiction, you
that.
probably have a whole wide of range of
Yes.
inspirations.
Heroic Chord very much comes from a lot of my favorite JRPGs. It comes a lot from Final Fantasy, especially 10 and 12.
Yeah.
Like this serene, verdant landscape dotted with ruins and like full of just like really weird, horrible monsters is kind of very Final Fantasy 10 and 12. My favorite is 12.
Yeah. I remember the movie, like when the first time they're doing CGI hair.
Oh yeah, Spirits Within.
Yes, that was so well done. Like it's.
Oh yeah, it was mind blowing at the time.
Yes,
it was absolutely just like, how could you even do that at the time? So it also came a lot. Heroic Chord also came from my love of mechanically. It came from my love of World of Darkness.
Oh, I know this. The vampire, werewolf, mummy, mage.
Yes, the bestie who taught me how to play D&D also had a lot of Palladium books. I played Heroes Unlimited. That game is a mess. That game rules.
Yes. I've always liked Palladium for their the lore that they put into the book. Yeah. Like they don't just, here's a system. Like they put a lot of work into the world.
And it's crazy.
Yes.
Everything in Palladium is bananas. It's absolutely full throttle. What is balance? We don't care. Do you want to be a Hydra? Like,
yes,
absolutely nuts. And it's glorious. But like we played randomly rolled Heroes Unlimited characters, and I randomly rolled the best version of the best power, and there was not a lot of challenges for us
No.
in that game. Because when you have ultra physical structure plasma, everything dies
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. I did their Rifts one.
Oh,
And that's where it's like,
this is wild.
it's like, oh, I'm a vagabond. I've got, little armor and everything, and I'm a glitter boy. I'm just walking around in super armor. And it's like,
yeah, Palladium does not care.
it's like,
Absolutely
it's like,
not.
like, nope. Or I'm a small dragon. I can't.
Yeah.
I can fight anything. Oh, cute little human who can sneak around and do things. Yeah, it's like, yeah, balance.
No, we don't care about it.
No.
I think the other thing is that the lore for Rifts has been described as this like 80s power metal, full throttle power fantasy.
Oh, God, yeah.
And that's just so enchanting. I love any game where the designers just went ham.
Yes.
And that's Palladium.
I have a question for you then, as another Canadian, because in Rifts, like a lot of other games, Quebec becomes free Quebec.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, and as a Canadian, because I live in Ontario, and it's like, well, I don't really think that would work because, I know in the 80s the separation kept coming up, so I think that's why a lot of games put it in there. But it was like, as a Canadian, it's like, I don't think you quite see the full picture, but interesting that you put it in there.
And when you think about it that way, what it must feel like to be Irish.
Oh, jeez.
And just like to be reading worldwide media and just be like, well, champ, it's a little more complicated than that, actually.
Yeah. But then there's, what is it? There's games like Shadowrun where the Irish became like the Fey world, just took over Ireland again.
Yeah, it's like, again, what it must be to be Irish and just be like, hey, we're a little more complicated than fairy tales.
Exactly. It's not just fays and elves and stuff coming back. It's like there's more to us than that.
Yeah, it's like if all you're doing is car bombs or fairy, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, listen, if all you're doing when you talk about Canada is the FLQ, there's
more to that. Yeah.
Not only that, there's more to that aspect.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Than you're telling. It's like, and that also comes back to the folklore jam. Is it like kind of an important reason why you have to write about your own folklore? Is that like every place in the world is more complicated than you imagine it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Every myth in the world is more complicated than you imagine it to be. So like, tell your own story in the full complexity that you know because it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
Leave other people to tell their stories in the complexity that they know and you do not.
And this is obviously what you brought into all the games you've done.
Yeah. Heroic Court is very the central area of the continent of Amylte is called the Goat Home Veldt, and it's just a massive flat prairie. I don't know where I would have got prairie experience.
I'm just trying to think there. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's
when I'm running Sword of Symphonies very regularly, I'm like, okay, sunset starts and it's going to end in about 2 hours. Because listener, that's what it's like when it's flat.
Yes.
Sun takes forever to go down. And it's just like I inject so much of living in Edmonton specifically into Heroic Court because it's okay. I'm gonna take a sidestep. I promise I'm coming back.
Oh no worries.
If you are a Canadian in Canada studying literature, you must study Canadian literature. It is a requirement for your degree.
Yes.
That's just how we roll up here. And so one of the things that I remember from years and years and years ago in college studying Canadian lit is that like environment is something that Canadians are very focused on. They're very focused on the world around the characters, especially the natural world around the characters. There's usually a very strong sense of place in Canadian literature.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot. And I definitely Heroic Court is that game. It's about the place you're in. It's about the world around you. You cast spells by taking one spell piece from your character sheet and one from the world around you.
Oh, okay.
And you mash those two words together, and then you tell your GM what that 2-word phrase does. So like, I'm trying to think of one that isn't upsetty spaghetti because my characters on Sword of Symphonies like to make weird spells.
Yeah.
But like if you had the word watching on your list, and in the environment one of the words swirling around, there's usually 5 or 6, is starlight, you could cast watching starlight, and then you tell your GM, like, I think that's like the light from above from the stars kind of flares up and it makes everything more brightly lit and we can see
Okay.
what's going on.
Right. Okay.
And so then you kind of you negotiate with the player for kind of how much that costs. But the aspect of reaching into the environment and taking something that's from the world around you to cast a spell is very Canadian literature. It's just, it's who we are.
Well, that's so it's an interesting magic system. Then it's really like it's a lot more interactive than just I cast
Yes.
magic missile. It's
Yeah, that's for a couple of reasons. One of them is I don't like spell lists. I don't like them as a player, and I don't like them as a well, I don't hate them as a GM because I don't have to worry. But as a player, there's so much like analysis paralysis. Which ones do I take? Which ones are good? What can I do with this? Do I wait while I read all my spells to find out if there's a loophole in one of them that will get me out of this situation?
Yes.
And as a game designer, I don't want to write a million spells. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. That sucks. So having a system that lets your players create their spells not only gives them a little bit more buy-in into their magic, but it also means as a designer that you don't have to write them and you don't have to balance them.
And I can see the mage from influence from White Wolf there, whereas like this level gives you ability to do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
How you do it is up to you and the GM of like, oh, okay, so if I have, soul of this, I can sort of see astral projection. It's like, okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Like,
exactly.
Okay, sure.
The other thing is skills. I really love when players can freely combine stats and skills, and that's a White Wolf thing.
Yes.
The friend who got me into Palladium and D&D also did run a campaign of Vampire for us.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind.
Yes.
Vampire blew my mind as a teenager because it was like I was so used to D&D. And it's like, so you're telling me that I can roll this social skill with my physical power to just like bully somebody
if it makes sense. Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, I'm using my intelligence with my gun skill to have an idea what the weapon is.
Yes.
Sure.
Like I'm using my perception skill with my physical strength to gauge whether or not I could climb that wall.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. It was a revelation to me, and it's something I want to include in all my games, is that players have the freedom to decide how they use what they're given.
Yeah.
Because I found that so much more engaging.
There's a couple of games I have which is very open for that, and it's like, okay, you tell me what skill and stat you think you should use. Like, give me a reason why you're doing it, not just say you're taking your best 2 period. But it's like, if you can come up with a reasonable explanation of why you should use a social skill with, or with your physical stat, I have no problem with that.
Like the stats in Heroic Chord are actually, I'm so glad you mentioned players having a reason, because that's exactly what they are. They're kind of the motivating emotions of a character. We have understanding, sensitivity, subtlety, daring, and adaptability.
Oh,
so it's like, because I don't believe that concrete intelligence is a thing. I don't believe that one person is smart and another person isn't.
Yeah.
That's not something I believe. And so I didn't want to use intelligence as part of a stat line for this game. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, let's just do whatever. Let's just go nuts. And so the result is like, I roll daring melee weapons to just do the attack.
Yes.
I'm being daring. I'm rolling subtlety melee weapons to do a sneak attack. I am rolling understanding melee weapons to like figure out what's going on with this sword, or like to analyze the enemy's battle plan based on kind of how they're moving. And like that has resulted in, even if players are just picking their best 2, which they're free to do.
They're free to do. Yeah. If they give a reason for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's prompting them to give reasons. It's like, okay, my best is subtlety. So what about what I'm doing right now is sneaky?
Yep.
And that prompts players to be like, okay, I'm being sneaky because I am approaching while the enemy is distracted. And that's where you kind of get those meaty little pieces of
And
character
it just
description.
flushes out the game and the story a lot more instead of
Yeah.
I hit.
Yes, my favorite thing about D&D 4.0 is that you never say, I guess I hit it with my axe. You never say that in 4.0.
No.
You've always got something tactical you can do.
Yeah.
Even if you're a fighter. And to someone who played so much third ed and so much 3.5, it's like, no, actually, not having to say, I guess I hit it with my sword rules. It's good. Sorry for haters, but you.
No.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
But you're wrong.
Yeah. Sorry for haters. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that there were a lot of decisions that were made in 4E that were an improvement.
Yes.
Admittedly, 4E is not as friendly to theater of the mind, which people became very accustomed to in third ed and 3.5, which is admittedly, I don't think that's a design mistake. I think that is a slight tactical error.
Yeah.
To take a franchise where people are used to theater, even though it's based on chainmail, it's classically a minis game, has been the whole time, but people got accustomed to playing without minis in 3 and 3.5, and they didn't take that into account in 4th ed.
But I mean, yes, it's always been there. Even anyone who's played D&D, they have the miniatures, you have the layout, a lot more than you just did theater of the mind.
Yeah. No. You've got a little guide, and maybe sometimes you have a mini, and sometimes you're like, okay, this paperclip is our bard, whatever. But you have to. I've been all kinds of office supplies.
The dice. This D4 is this D6 is that. That's the bigger.
Yeah. And the real like mind-blowing life hack is when you're like, no, this D8 is my bard. He's got 8 HP.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm at level 1.
Yeah. And other things also, I do know with different players, you also have experiences as well. Some players need more visual, and some have problems with the theater of the mind. And it's nothing against the player. It's just they have a problem with that. So it's like, okay, I'll pull out the maps to help for that.
Yeah.
And so you have an ongoing game now, don't you? I believe. Let me just check your.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I've got 2 podcasts running.
Yes.
We've got the award-winning Sword of Symphonies. In 2021, it won Best Actual Play Not Playing D&D.
Okay.
No, it didn't. That was 2022. We won Best Actual Play Not Playing D&D. No, because I would have had that trophy. I won Best GM in 2022, and my cast won Best Ensemble Cast in 2021.
Oh, congrats. Nice.
I love them. We're nominated for both of those awards again this year.
Oh.
We're gonna find out in September.
So what's that? I'm gonna make a note because I didn't even know that there was such a thing.
Oh yes.
So what's
the New Jersey Web Festival?
New Jersey Web Festival. Okay.
It is a festival for web-based media, primarily things like short films. But they were the first. They were the first film festival to accept actual plays, first podcasts, and more recently streams now too.
Oh, okay.
So we've been entered, accepted, nominated 3 years running for Sword of Symphonies.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I could not do it without my cast, especially Kathleen. She's my right hand.
Okay.
She's our editor. She also composes all our music.
That's a lot of work.
She's up for Best Original Score this year, and that's the one I need her to win. Like, I can lose Best GM. I won it once. What are they going to do? Take my trophy? They'll have to fight me. But Kathleen deserves to win for all the work she puts into our soundscapes and especially our music.
I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I saw the podcast and I'm like, it's going to be there. My roommate also loves listening to podcasts for D&D and stuff, so I'm going to introduce him to yours as well then.
I hope you both enjoy it.
Yeah. So what's that one based on? Which is the game system that one's using?
That one's Heroic Chord. That one's the Heroic Chord playtest. Yes.
And it just kept going.
Oh, it's still running, yeah.
How many players do you have?
I've got 3.
Okay.
I have got the mega genius Kathleen, my right hand. I have got Chaos Goblin Kirsten, my bestie who moved to Vancouver, and I don't forgive her, and human teddy bear Nick. And Kathleen and Nick are American, and Kirsten and I were part of Cabal Games together. We went to school together.
Yeah.
And then she moved to Vancouver, and I'm mad still.
Well, I can't blame you. I mean, it's like, really? You're going to BC? Why? Or
why?
You love overpriced things?
You love humidity?
Yeah.
You've lived on the prairies your whole life. You're going to wilt and die.
Yeah, you know.
I love them all to pieces. They're geniuses.
So would you prefer more people or less? Like, because I like around 4 people for my games maximum, just to try and keep things moving.
I typically have a smaller party when I'm doing a podcast, because it's easier to make sure everyone shares mic time, basically. When you've got Roar to Heaven is the actual play podcast of Blazing Him, my very, very anime Lumen game. And that has a cast of 4 people.
Okay.
That one's shorter running. That one is a limited series. It's going to have 13 episodes when it's finished.
Oh, okay.
It's very anime. It's deeply upsetty spaghetti. Profoundly upsetty spaghetti. I love it. And that one has a cast of 4.
Okay. But it's harder, like, you're doing this remote, obviously, because you said BC and I do find as well, yes, when you're doing it online remote, more people makes it so much harder to do.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I still want in-person gaming, because you get the table side talks. You know, and as a GM, that I have no problem with it. It's like, if I'm running and they're discussing part of their own things, like, that makes it easier for me. You guys do your own thing. I'll just let you, Yeah.
In person, I'll happily run a game for 5 or 6.
Yeah.
A 4 is still kind of a sweet spot because of how well balanced it is. But I'll run a game for 5 or 6 in person. Online, 3 or 4, please.
Yeah. Because I feel also bad for, you're right, for the players, because when you have 4, if I focus on you for a couple minutes on you, and a couple minutes there, by the time we get to the last person, it's like over 10 minutes before they've had a chance to do anything.
Yes.
And when they're sitting there remotely.
And I don't know if you're playing Dungeon Dragon, but because Dungeon Dragon is so pass-fail, that person could have been waiting 10 minutes. They could roll a 2 and accomplish nothing.
Yes.
And then go another 10 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is excruciating. Absolutely.
Like, okay, so you failed. Okay, now but I know you, like, what? Or and again, in just for you're right, the spell lists are terrible. Because you're sitting there like, okay, it's your turn. What are you doing? I'm sure not what spell I have. Like, well, I'm sorry, but everyone else has been waiting. I hate to say it, but if you don't have a spell ready, I'm gonna have to move on, right?
Yeah.
Which is not fair to anyone, but
no, and it's not fun.
No.
And it's like you're just rules lawyering your spells, looking for the loophole that's going to get you out of. And it's an electric moment when you find the loophole.
Oh yes.
It's a delightful moment when you're like, actually, this spell doesn't have a duration. But like, the trade-off for that is a ton of time spent reading all your spells, a ton of time spent just like trying to find out exactly how permissive your GM is. It's spell lists are, I think, if you're playing with a table that is less than like 70% fluent in D&D, spell lists bog the game down.
They do. Oh, they do very much. Especially like once you get higher levels, because then it's sort of like, okay, what am I taking today? What are we doing today? So I should take this, but I need that one. I've had games where I've run where it's like, for cleric, because like, you're talking to your god. Make a prayer roll. If, it's like, based on whatever level of spells, but if you do well, the god gives it to you, because it's not your spells. Like, you're, as such as a cleric, you're asking your god for the mana. So at least that made clerics easier that way. We didn't have to worry about spell lists. But then it's sort of like overpowered them a bit more compared to mages, because then mages and it's like, oh, right. Yeah, how do I do this?
If they roll badly, oopsie doodle, like, that's not a great feel.
No.
I'm running also, I run a D&D brunch game, again online, first thing Sunday mornings.
Nice.
And I don't love D&D. I'm an indie designer, and we're infamously bratty about it. I'm not full fish knife, but I am kind of a stubborn indie
No, that's fine.
precious princess.
My thing is D&D is sort of the gateway drug for gaming.
Yes, but
You know,
somebody who doesn't move on from it, who hasn't tried like the meth of gaming, like ruin your life.
there's
Play
so many other
Lancer.
there's so many other different types of games out there from
Okay,
all sorts of publishers that give you what you want. Do you want a Viking game? There's Viking games out there.
yes. It's like, yes, exactly. And like people who reskin D&D, it's like one thing I tell people on my stream, because I have a TTRPG design mentorship stream on
Ooh,
Thursdays.
okay.
It's called Take Flight.
Take Flight. Okay, I'll make notes.
It,
Is this on Twitch or?
It is on Twitch. It is on the +1 EXP channel. And every 2 weeks, I sit on a new game designer down with an experienced one to answer their questions and help give them advice and help to get the project off the ground. It's so fun. And one thing I'm always saying to people on Take Flight is like, D&D has the bones of a fantasy murder hobo adventure game. No matter what skin you put on it, no matter what you can rename every stat, every skill, you can reimagine combat as social encounters. The pace is dictated by those bones.
Mm-hmm.
The story is always going to feel the same because that's the pace of it. That's the bones of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to tell a story about court intrigues, you have to do more than reskin D&D. You have to find a game whose bones are built for that.
Yes. I know one called Pendragon, which is King Arthur one. Right, and that's just it. It's like,
you recommend Pendragon.
but it's meant.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it's meant for knights and the courtly intrigue, right? It's like
it's not meant for anything else.
Oh no, it's not. It's not meant for anything else.
What's on your banner, my dude? I don't care what you're like. You don't have a base attack bonus. What's your heraldric symbol?
Exactly. That's. I've got a fancy sword. I don't care what your sword.
Oh my God.
What your shield do? How well have you talked to the court? Which can you present yourself well to the king? Well, no, I bash things. Well, then who cares? You're sorry. You go to the back of the line because if you can't talk to the king.
Yeah, you don't have an armor class. Who's your dad?
Exactly.
Like, it's a long running joke that I would love to be in a Pendragon actual play.
Oh, really?
It's a long running because I love a game that is what it is.
Yes.
Is directly what it is and says, I don't care about the things that aren't this. Get wrecked.
Yeah. Like there's no, I'm a thief. That. You're a what? No, you're not a thief.
No.
You're a knight.
No. This is a court.
This is court.
You're not talking to these people. You're a thief.
Yeah. You're not even getting inside.
We're putting you in the stocks. You need to be, you need to have things thrown at you until you stop this.
Exactly.
Like, it's
but
bananas.
But again, like that's what I'm saying. If you want to do, court stuff, there's a game specifically like this. Exactly. Yes. It's limited for anything else, but it's perfect for what it does.
Exactly.
And I did like the White Wolf one. Except they did the power creep where vampires like this, werewolves are like this, mages are like this. You're like, wait a minute. Why am I?
Then they have the audacity to make them all compatible with each other. Like, I am absolutely not playing a vampire alongside my friend's mage. Are you kidding me?
I tried to run the whole thing where mages, werewolves, and mummies and all that, and it was just like, what have I done to myself?
It was what a mess. What a mess.
It just didn't. You're sitting there going like, well, wait a minute. The power level here is this, but a mage with only one sphere can resist an elder vampire. Wait, what?
No.
Wait,
fucked up.
I fucked. Yeah. So.
Oh, you're a hunter? I'm sorry. Go home.
Yes.
You're just a guy? Absolutely not. No. This dude's a geist. He's possessed 3 ways to Sunday. Yeah. You can't play with him.
No. So like I said, but White Wolf was good for what it was, for that the whole idea for that. The vampire, especially like the vampire lore compared to D&D trying to do vampires. No.
D&D vampires, at least they get good art for them. That's all I got. Yeah. But then the thing is, White Wolf is so much better built for things like court intrigues.
Yes.
And social encounters, even though it doesn't have a social encounter system, but like if all you know is big mass market shiny cover RPGs, reskin White Wolf for your
Yeah.
social stuff before you reskin D&D.
Yeah.
My favorite White Wolf is Geist. I played it on launch.
Okay.
It got me to play Persona 3, which is one of my favorite JRPGs. It's so weird. It's like you have this ghost that's haunting you. You're a dude, but you have a weird ghost. It's bizarre.
Oh,
I
okay.
love
Because
it.
I know they did Wraith, where you're
Yes.
undead, like sort of the crow, the idea of from the
Yeah.
crow,
And they did
the
Promethean.
Promethean, yes, and they
The
did
Euro
Changeling
Frankenstein.
and
Changeling is
Changeling and all that.
sweet.
So they had a quite a wide line of different ones.
My favorite White Wolf game of all of the White Wolves, the whitest wolves, is Scion.
Oh, really?
I've played it so much with my friends, and that's the thing. Even if a game is not good, and I would argue that Scion is not good, it's really awfully balanced. There's some political stuff in the writing where it's like, oh, every female god is a prostitute. That's not maybe great optics there, champ.
Yeah.
And what we were talking about earlier about like telling your own story and letting people tell their own story is like a lot of the foreign gods they're writing about are not treated very delicately. I mean, I was a edgelord 20 something. I was not prepared for that conversation when I played Scion. But the thing is, because it's White Wolf, it's built for big, stupid fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it succeeds at that. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm throwing a billiard ball at a guy on top of a roof that I can barely see, and I'm rolling 2 handfuls of dice to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like that. It's cool. It's big and cool and dumb.
But sometimes that's what you want.
It's the same thing that makes Rifts appealing. It's
yes.
this big, cool, stupid action. And
well, I was gonna say, I think it also depends on the group you have, right? Because you can play bad. Like I've played games that are not that good, but with the crowd, we don't care, right? Now I don't know if you're familiar with Exalted.
Yes, I have never played Exalted, but I know who they are.
Yeah.
I know who Exalted is.
Yes. But that's the idea. Is like, yeah, it's got some. It's not the best. Rules are a little jinky and stuff like that. But if you're playing with a good group, it doesn't matter.
The art is fully filthy.
Yes. Yeah.
The art is every piece of Exalt. I haven't flipped through the manual or anything like that, but
yeah, it's got its interesting points to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, as long as you're with a group that's it is willing to overlook some stuff, and you're like, okay, we'll just house rule, go on. Now, since you're the game designer, you've done this once. How much like of a rules lawyer are you for things?
Honestly, I am a shameless power gamer. So if I'm the GM, I'm not a rules lawyer at all.
Okay.
Because as a GM, I take be a fan of your players pretty literally. It just means I'm just sitting there with popcorn trying to see what you lunatics are going to do next. And I'm not trying to guess what you're going to do. I'm not trying to predict you. I'm not trying to get you to do anything. Sometimes I will try to bait them.
Yes.
But they can always tell when I'm doing that.
Not only that, they'll go for the wrong clue anyways.
They absolutely will, especially Kirsten. Oh my God.
Like
she's
you gotta love that. Like, here's a minor little PC. Here's an important NPC, a tiny little NPC you just barely meet. We're gonna focus on that one.
Kirsten does what we call the super Kirsten double think. And she does not stop at double. We just call it that. Because you'll present her with a clue and she'll immediately guess what it means correctly.
Oh.
And then she'll be like, but what if that was bait? What if that's what you're trying to get me to think? But what if that's what you're trying to get me to think? And eventually she always finds the wrong answer, even though her first instinct
was the right. It was like, stop.
She's an absolute genius, but she will absolutely throw the genius over her shoulder. It is wild to play with. And that's part of what trained me to not try to predict my players, because I can't predict her. I've known her for a decade. I don't know.
Just like give up. Next. No, so
when I'm a player, I will rules lawyer if I think it gives me an advantage because I'm a power gamer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. See, I'm
It's
similar
pretty cool.
for when I'm running. Like, I don't want to. If I'm running a story and in the thing, don't stop me with a rule.
Mhm.
Right. It's more like I want this part to continue. I can always retro stuff like okay, it happened
Yeah,
like this instead. But, so go back to your podcast and your so you're saying she does music as well. So do you have music playing when you're
Kathleen
doing
does music. No, no, Kathleen adds it in post.
Oh,
Kathleen
okay.
composes it after we've played and then lays it
Ah,
on beautifully over top.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work too. Then that's like
Oh
credit to
boy,
her for that.
howdy. She's a genius. She is
Because
a super genius. She is my right hand without whom I would get nothing done.
yeah,
She's Did she ever know that she's my hero?
well, that's
She
impressive.
is the wind
That's
beneath my
yeah. Well, no, it's like I said because I know how hard it is editing. So I can just imagine have to go through and add music to fit the story.
The other thing is that Kathleen's particular genius, because they're all geniuses. Again, I think everybody's smart, but these are my friends, so they're special
They're
smart.
even better.
Yeah, they're but is Kathleen can read my freaking mind. Whenever I'm trying to play a shitty little trick, she knows it. She knows
Ah,
my shitty little tricks. Like they'll be in a combat and I'll be like, so this attack is happening and you have to spend 2 successes to avoid it. And Kathleen's like, if we send 2 successes, we'll have less than 6, and Kat's going to use that move next because we won't be able to avoid that. And I'm like,
what?
no,
No.
why would I do that? Or they met an NPC who was a powerful dragon in disguise because the dragons in Heroic Court are all
I Yep.
shapeshifters. And Kathleen's like, at the end of the episode during memory time, because we have this little thing where we at the end of the episode we share our memories from the episode
Oh, that's
as a way to
impressive.
unpack and kind of
Yep.
give each other feedback. And Kathleen's like, I really like that that was the Shadow Monarch. And I'm like,
What?
what are you talking about, Kathleen? No, no, no. She can read my freaking
That's
mind.
oh, so that's actually interesting. You said those do the unpacking at the end of the session.
Oh, memory time is so fun because it basically everyone goes around the table and says what was most memorable for them. And it's like, okay, Nick, I really loved that speech you gave. That was really like that was an interesting insight into your character. Like Kathleen, the spell you cast was so weird. Where'd you come up with? And so we take a minute at the end of every episode to share our memories. And it also, in addition to being like a little bit of a recap, it's also just a nice way to tell each other what we appreciated. And it's a great way for the players to tell me as the GM what they liked.
I like that idea. That's very interesting.
I love memory time.
No, that's you're right because then it's like reinforces the positivity of the plane
Yeah.
and that.
And so, and the other thing is that the players will be like, yeah, I really liked the way you played this NPC this episode. And I'll be like, okay, this is an NPC I should be bringing back because the players really enjoy having them around.
Yeah.
Or like, they often really like the combats because I get very weird with the combats. And I'm like, okay, all right, I guess I need to get
How do you get
weird.
weird with it now that you open it up? How do you get weird with the combats?
Listen, I'm a big Silly Hill fan. I'm a big so I'm a firm believer that a monster does not need to be even vaguely approaching anthropomorphic ever.
Okay.
So there are kind of 3 main things that you can get into like combats with. Maybe for sometimes dragons, but not usually.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't. But those 4. I lied. There are 4, not including dragons.
Like the Spanish Inquisition. There's 3,
Yeah.
no 4.
Wait, yeah, I remember. I have memories. I promise. Memory time did not reinforce, did not prepare me for this. So there are natural disasters and animals which you can fight against in this game. Although the combat involves advancing either destroy, redirect, or outlast. Okay. So usually people are trying to redirect animals to just get them to back off or outlast natural disasters.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
There's automata, which are kind of forgotten weapons from the pre-apocalypse that move now and they're ancient robots. Yeah. They're ancient robots. It's also very Zelda Breath of Wild. There's ancient robots now. Yeah. Noble demons, which are like godlike creatures that are bound by obsessions. And my players really like noble demons because they're very frightening because they're virtually godlike. So when you're interacting with one, it's like, how do I interact with this in a way that's not going to get me killed?
Yeah.
And you can have a combat with that kind of thing in this game because you can just advance redirect. You cannot
Right.
destroy it,
No.
but you can convince it to help you or to stop doing
So
something.
like a more of like the social combat instead of the physical combat, right? It's like,
Yeah. I tried to make a very versatile combat system, and so far it's been working.
that's not, no, I like that idea because I've always tried to get my players to understand not everything's a combat.
Not everything's a combat. If you play enough Dungeon Dragon, like everything looks like a nail.
You hammered. Yeah.
Yeah, but not everything needs to be hammered.
You can't touch this.
And there's also my elder one is there's always something bigger out there.
Yes.
So I always
so
like the thing is I liked about rifts like D&D is always weird. It's like your first level you meet kobolds, you go higher level you never see a kobold again ever.
Yeah, my game we see kobolds all the time because we love them.
Yeah, but it's
so
like
we hang out with them. We just
where'd they
think
go?
cute.
No, you hit third level. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't see kobolds anymore. Now it's orcs. Like, well, where were they before?
Yeah.
Whereas in rifts, it's like, no, you can still run across something that can wipe your entire party out if you're not careful.
Except the glitter boy, he's fine.
Well, yeah, yes,
He's okay.
He's
He's okay.
He's okay. He just can't get out of his suit, but he'll be okay.
Your
But that's
vagabond is in trouble, but whatever. The glitter
yeah,
boy's fine. That's what matters.
exactly. But that's where I like the idea. Like, it's like the world doesn't, monsters
Yeah.
don't go away when they become too weak or they don't show up because they're too strong. It's like, no, there's things out there that if you run into it, it could potentially kill you. So think about it before you just start hitting
Right.
things.
And having encounter rules that are not strictly violence based
Mhm.
means that you can introduce creatures that are more powerful than the party, and the party can get out of that through other means.
Yes.
Like Outlast, you could just run, you could just escape, and by advancing Outlast, you can still get an encounter out of escaping.
Yeah, and it's still worth experience. I don't know if you guys if it does experience or milestones or stuff. Advanced, yeah. But it's like that still counts towards something because you figured a way out to not die.
Exactly. And that way you can introduce like godlike creatures. That's like, no, you still need to engage with this threat, even though you're not engaging physically.
Yes.
And the last kind of encounter in Heroic Horde is my favorite. It's horrors. They are evil spirits left behind from the last war before the apocalypse. And they're very Silent Hill inspired. They're like abstract depictions of human violence that are like monsterified. And so the descriptions are usually very eerie. They're usually very surreal. I'm a surrealist through and through. I just love it.
Yeah.
And so like there's one that is like a ball of light and grasping hands and smoke. And like what it tries to do is grab a person and haul it like and keep them from escaping and pull them in. And it fills the area with smoke that makes it hard for people to breathe. And it brings like debris crash. It's the memory of a warehouse fire.
Where people couldn't get away and they burnt and everything. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like finding these roundabout ways of describing human trauma and human tragedy and turning them into scary ghosts.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, it's so fun. I love them.
Do you pull any part from some of the native traditions in your games?
Do not. Partially because I straight up do not know enough.
Okay.
To do it kind of
justice and properly with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because one interview I did recently was a guy from Appalachia, and bless you.
No, I'm good.
Oh,
I'm good.
From Appalachia, so he created a game system based on a lot of the Appalachian myths and legends and lore and stuff. And I thought, well, that's interesting to use your background. Like you said, Canadians, we don't have as much as but we do. We just don't realize it.
We don't notice it.
But he did research and everything and went, oh, well, this is interesting. Oh, here's a story. I'll use that in the game, as an encounter or, sort of an evil creature and things. So that's why I was just wondering if you did this sort of the same idea in your.
I did actually not the ongoing trauma that is affecting our native people, which needs to.
That's not what you'd want to get into. No,
that's not mine to touch. That's not mine to play with. That's just mine to help whenever I see a cause that's helping it. Actually, some friends and I are starting a TTRPG game day for charity that's supporting an Edmonton area Indigenous charity, helping vulnerable people. The event is going to be called World Builders YEG.
Sorry, World
Builders. Because like the GMs are building a world for their games, while the charity is trying to build a better Edmonton.
Okay.
And we're just getting started. It's early days on that. So
all right, well, you'll have to keep me in the loop for that so I can put information up on our page and stuff.
I would love it if you would.
Yeah. Oh no, we have no problem. We're small, but we still want to try and help out, as much as can just to spread the word and stuff like that. So
yeah. So it's like it's not mine to play with. But what is mine to play with is so the gods in Heroic Court are stationary monuments. They're asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to become a player character, they're all called rangers. They're called rangers because everyone is a little bit of a D&D ranger and a little bit of something else.
Okay.
A little bit ranger, a little bit cleric, a little bit something else. And so in your backstory, before you even start the game, your character went on a pilgrimage to one of these places. So your character has already survived one of the most dangerous places in the world and met a god. That's a given day one. Yeah. And one of the gods, enduring Gaius, is asleep in a labyrinth beneath the tundra. And so a lot of the specific kind of traumas and a lot of the abilities that the Enduring Legionnaires get from that quest to the tundra is based on, I live in what is basically the tundra.
Yeah,
I live in Edmonton.
You understand winter. You understand winter.
Oh yeah. Oh boy, howdy. I know what it feels like when your eyelashes freeze shut.
Yes.
And every time I go to the United States, listen, Americans, every time I go to your United States of America, I have a wonderful time. However, someone takes it upon themselves. It could be someone behind a cash register, or it could be an Uber driver, but someone takes it upon themselves to tell me I don't know real cold till I've been to Minnesota.
Yes, or you don't know snow until Buffalo. I mean, okay, Buffalo does have a lot of snow, but yes,
yeah, but Patrick, you live in Ontario. Like the snow in Ontario, not only is there a ton of it, it weighs 1 million tons.
Yes,
I grew up in the St. Lawrence River Valley.
And also people we tell them it's humid cold. Well, that doesn't make a difference. Oh, yes, it does. If it's humid outside and it's cold, you can't stay warm.
You're never getting warm.
You
get layering. Home, you have to change and shower.
Mm-hmm. To get warm.
Hot a shower as you can handle, or you are never getting warm.
No, and people are like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's humid or not. Like, yes, yes, it does.
That's part of why, I will take -40 eyelashes, freeze shut Edmonton brutal wind over snow weighs 1,000 pounds and I am never getting dry Ottawa.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I've been in Winnipeg as well. And again, winds like crazy, but I'm like,
oh yeah,
it's not humid. Like it's -40.
Warm up. You can warm up on the prairies.
Yeah, -40. I wear enough parkas. I'm fine. Ottawa -40 with humidity. I'm like, I'm freezing cold.
I will say this. I grew up in a small town near Kingston. And when I moved to Edmonton, the biggest bummer for me, we don't have snow days here. The snow's not heavy enough.
Oh no.
So we could get 3 feet of snow. You're going to school, bud.
Yeah. Of course. Then there's your friend in Vancouver. We have 1 inch of snow and we're shutting everything down.
Yeah. Everyone just absolutely goes. It's the purge in Vancouver when there's 1 inch of snow.
What do we do?
Every time I go to the States, it's like, champ, do you know how much further north Edmonton is from Minnesota? It's windy.
Oh God, yeah.
You don't say.
We're closer to the Arctic.
Yes, and it's the prairies. I have a hint for you. There'll be winds.
Yes, if you think Minnesota's bad winds, imagine the entire province. It's flat. Oh wait, and the province next to it is flat too.
And the one over
is. Yeah, so it's like there's winds get to go through 3 provinces before it hits, and
absolutely, it's wild.
I have a couple more just questions for their Cat. Sorry to bother you there.
No. I'm just thinking about America.
Just thinking because you did D&D riffs and all that. classes. So do you
Classes.
like
I,
because you're limited to this is your class, these are your abilities you get. Whereas White Wolf and other ones are like, no, you want to be a mage and a fighter?
yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I wrote an article on my Substack last weekend about classes, Patrick. I'm
Ah,
in the mood to talk about
all
them.
right.
I love classes and I hate them. It
Yeah.
depends on the game.
Okay.
Because when I was writing Blazing Hymn, which is a Lumen game, it's very stripped down. There's not a ton of moving parts.
Mhm.
And I felt like I wanted classes with abilities siloed into those classes to give the players a real sense of difference, to make the
Okay.
game feel very colorful. So like I'm playing a Messer type, I have different abilities than my colleague playing a Z-Stone type.
Mhm.
We play at different ranges, we use different kinds of moves. And in a game that doesn't have a lot of moving parts, making players feel very different from each other can sometimes be very valuable. And
Mhm.
classes are a great way to do that. In a game with a lot of moving pieces like D&D or like Heroic Chord, yeah, Heroic Chord has enough moving pieces that's why I did this.
Mhm.
A class gives a player a handle on the moving pieces,
Yeah.
gives them a bucket. Like, here's your bucket. Here's all the different things that you can do in this. There's other stuff too. You can do other stuff too, but this is the stuff that's yours. Because if I were to sit down at D&D and there were no class system and it was just a free build of D&D, I would not know what the hell to do
No, well, yeah,
or where
D&D
to
is like
start.
there's just too much. There's just
Exactly.
too much.
And you don't want to create decision paralysis in your players. So if you have a lot of abilities in a game, classes are a great way to, you start with the fantasy and the players like, I'm reading it, I'm like, I want to be a bard, I want to be a musician, I want to
Mhm.
cause a little trouble, get a little funny.
Yeah.
I play bards and paladins because I like to have answers.
Okay.
They have a widely varied toolkit
Mhm.
and I like that.
No,
I've also played druids for the same reason.
I agree with you. Like because D&D, there's just too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes I felt that 3.5 was sort of like a video game with all the different like feats and everything, and then
Yeah.
you're trying to calculate. Okay, so what do I need if I want to be fifth level? I will need this, so I have to plan,
Oh my
and
god.
that's where it got to me not
And that
fun
was the
because you're
heyday of the prestige class too.
yeah exactly because then you have to plan
Yeah.
out. It's like I don't have to plan out at first level what I'm going to do at fifth or
Right.
sixth. I'm just want to hear that fun.
But if you don't and you miss that arcane
Oh,
focus
you're
feat,
screwed.
you're absolutely boned.
Yeah.
And you can't live out the fantasy that you're
No.
having. And that's D&D. Why? That's my friends refer to it as the math hammer, when you just use the math to figure out the most optimal path through the game and you
Yes.
don't like feel your way through it.
No.
And that's satisfying for some people, I guess, but it's
For
not the
well, for me,
fantasy.
I've played with players who are like, well, you shouldn't do that for your characters. Like, but I'm doing it for my character for like the concept. Like, this is my
Yeah.
concept of a character, and I want to have fun with it. Because I had a
Yeah.
half orc barbarian bard.
Cute.
And they're like, well, you should have this.
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm a Conan type thing. Like, I see myself as the
Oh
half orc
yeah,
Conan.
Conan. Yeah. You're charming and you're like you're
Exactly.
telling stories, and maybe you're telling stories about war glories and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That's
You
a
know,
very barbarian bard
yeah,
kind of
exactly. I can jump, I can
vibe.
climb, I can do this.
My my D&D 5th edition character is a bard who had skill focus in athletics. He was just a big stupid wrestle boy, and there was pretty much no enemy he could not put in a full Nelson. And it was very fun for me. I love that lad. But I have played count them, two Dragon Disciples, even though that's arguably like the worst prestige class numerically speaking,
Mhm.
because it's rad.
Yes,
You get to basically be a half dragon when you're done. Like, that rules.
well, yeah. What more would who wouldn't want that?
Right? It
Yeah.
rules. And that's the thing about D&D, is that like what rules and what is mathematically
Mhm.
optimal are not always the same thing.
No, and that's can be sometimes problematic,
Yeah.
and
And it does cause tension. Yeah.
it does. And some players are like, well, I wanted to, I built for fun, and I'm not be able to do some stuff, so I always try and help out characters. Like, here's a little extra, just because, I, I, I want you to have fun, and
You
that's
want
my
them to
main
have
thing. Is I'm
fun.
sure most GMs are. We want our players to have fun.
Of course.
And I don't want to have to sit there and go, okay, well, you don't have the best build because you forgot this and that. I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't care.
It's like the game I'm working on right now, Remarine, is
Oh,
actually classless.
am I allowed to? Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're allowed to
Okay.
talk about it. I've
So-
got a playtest live.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah,
We
you'll
are
have to send me
allowed.
the info for that there, and I'll make sure I
Yeah.
add this in the.
So I'll send you a link to the Remarine playtest.
Yeah.
Remarine is very inspired by, I describe it as Silent Hill meets StarCraft.
Ooh, okay. So is it
It's
futuristic sci-fi? You're in ships and stuff?
yes. It's future, well, not in ships, but it's you're in this kind of colony called Facility 8 that's the last holdout against this otherworldly force called the Atrophage, which is like eating away at reality.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then one of your allies who fights against them ascended, basically. And now, like, they were gone for a while, the Atrophage, and now they're back and they know you and they have memories of you.
Oh,
And the memories that this comrade shared with you is kind of part of character creation.
okay.
But because I didn't have a lot of abilities, like, there are 6 moves in the game, and a lot of the abilities are key to your memories. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, actually, I don't think I need a class here. I think
No.
free build works for this particular game.
Yeah.
Because emphasis is more on what kind of person you are and what you have done, what you are doing.
And the memory and stuff like that. So
yeah. So that's the other thing, is that classes will kind of put a focus on like what kind of archetype your character is, what kind of person they are, where they get their power from, and when all the characters are kind of getting their power from the same place, sometimes you want to not do that. Like, sometimes when all the characters are getting their power from the same place, you want to focus instead on what makes them individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And in this game, that was their memories.
Okay, that worked interesting.
Yeah. So that's,
because I was going to say, okay, White Wolf did it with, there's no real classes in White Wolf, but it's your, for the bloodlines for the vampires, right? Like it's your bloodline is your class.
Yes. I love them. I love the vampires.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the thing. It's like what makes a vampire character special is kind of this vampire clan that they're a part of. It's not like whether, like, I'm not a Tremere berserker. Why would you even? Never mind. That's ridiculous. They're silly magic men. But like, I'm a Tremere sorcerer or whatever. Like, that's not a thing.
No.
I mean, White Wolf also has some problematic stuff going on with the way they treat those things.
Yes.
Some of them just being like full culture stand-ins. Like, don't get me wrong, Ravnos are cool, but they are fully just Roma stand-ins, and White Wolf, you shouldn't do that.
No, that was like you're taking an entire real people,
actual people,
and I found some of the games, when you look at it, you're like, this has some problems if you look back, and like when you're playing it when you're younger and you're first playing, you're like, you don't really sometimes notice that until later on. You're like, wait a minute, that was not a good thing.
Yes. And heaven knows, like, we're old enough to have lived through a time when, frankly, these are based on real people was not seen as the messed up thing that it was. It just, it was not as widely known that it's super not okay to just, and like, we knew that, like, if you made a character that was like transparently like a racist stereotype of Chinese people, we had a chance of determining that was messed up. D&D's Oriental Adventures proves that not everyone felt that way.
No.
But like, and there's like, that's not an excuse. That's a, like, it was so ambient in the culture. And one of the great things about the internet is that it's given everyone more access to those people's real stories.
Yes. Because back in the day, to find it about real gypsies, you'd actually go to the library. Like, you'd have to do a lot of research, and the Oriental stuff is like, okay, you'd have to, get more culture than was available to you.
And now that you're on the internet, it's like, oh, I'm following a Roma person on Twitter, and they're like, hey, this is not cool. This is not cool.
No.
This is what my life was like. Don't do this.
Yeah.
And as long as you've got the willingness to listen to people and take what they say about their own experiences seriously, like that's the internet is such a huge vehicle. I mean, in my case, for growth.
Oh, it
There's
is.
a lot of stuff I did not know as a freaking teenager in the 90s that I know now, thanks to people sharing their experiences online.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the internet is good, but there's also, there's the crazies still out there, and
the internet is not.
But I find
problems,
also, I'm going to sidetrack just a little bit before we wrap up. For movies, for movies nowadays, I have issues with a lot of stuff where it's like it's so easy to Google some information, like like maps or locations or names of places, and you're like, how can you not just spend 5 minutes Googling stuff, or like, what's that culture like? What's their history like?
Yes.
Okay, if you're doing a science fiction and it's a made up world, you're free to do, whatever.
And I do love a made up world. I absolutely love a made up world.
But if you're basing something, that's taking place in Laos or whatever, spend, a couple of minutes to find out why that might be issues for other people,
like sensitivity consultants, the reason that they're a thing is because now I can literally just hop on Twitter and be like, hey, can anyone from India read this over and see if I've said anything massively messed up about India?
Yeah. It doesn't take long. Just is this expression good or bad? I'm not sure. I will check.
Yeah. If you're willing to listen to people and trust what they say about their own experiences, the internet is full of people who are happy to share, like, hey, actually, like, as a lady adjacent person, like, there's a lot of depictions of women in media that I find really gross.
Yes.
And that's something that, like, look, there's a lot of nerds who did not have a lady type person in their D&D party to say, hey, actually, yuck.
Yeah.
But now on the internet, if you're willing to read a lady on the internet saying, hey, actually, yuck, and take it seriously, that's growing. That's how that's done.
Yeah.
That's how I did it. I learned so much about people around the world thanks to internet. Like, it rules.
No, you're right. It's just, like I said, nowadays with the internet there, you have no excuse not to learn something, right? It's, how do I treat this person? How does this person react? What's this culture like? What's their, easy enough to do.
Yeah. And that's,
see, like, I've never role played women in the games.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, on a computer game, it's not really role playing.
No, you're just like, I'm Lara Croft. I shoot the guy. I take the statue.
But actually, in a role playing game, I'm sorry, I could fake it, but I really don't know.
And look, as long as you're not twirling your hair and saying shopping is fun, math is hard, I think you're probably good.
But as long as I get the nice chainmail breastplate that protects from everything.
As long as you spend fewer than 1 minute per session describing your breasts, you're advanced. You're okay.
Like, I was gonna say that's one issue even I've had for a while, is like, all the, like, in any fantasy, men are like, their armor in the men is like huge and all that. And then you get to the women, and it's like, that's a chainmail bathing suit.
Yeah.
How is that? Like,
how is that? Oh, that's just because. Oh, I see. You don't see that kind of person as a person. You see that kind of person as a boobies.
It's like, that's not armor. Like, and that's an issue I've always had, where it's like, even armors that have boobs, is like, you realize that's not a functional set of armor, right? Any piece of armor that draws the sword towards a particular spot is not good.
That's why one of my favorite Soul Calibur 4, sorry, she wasn't in 3, is Hilda. And she just wears a full freaking suit of armor. She's got a wolf motif on her helmet.
Oh, that's cool.
She fights with a long spear and a short sword.
Yeah.
She rules.
That's really cool.
Her alternate costume is a big old ball gown. Like, she does not have a skimpy costume. And I think the developer actually said that she was one of the most, like, alluring characters. And it's like, no, because you've let her be a fully functional person.
Mm-hmm.
I love her. I mean, I also love Sung Mina, and she's a different story, but
yeah.
she's also the ring out queen of Jungle City. So
Well, Kat, thank you very much. Is there any final words or anything you want to share with anyone?
let's see.
Put you on the spot.
Absolutely. I have two things. I have two of them. The first thing is that you can find my podcast, Sword of Symphonies and Roar to Heaven, at peachgardengames.com. You can also find them on your podcast feed. Roar to Heaven is obscene spaghetti anime goodness inspired by Evangelion and Symphogear, mostly Symphogear. Oops, I'm a degenerate. And Sword of Symphonies is kind of a very cozy and welcoming fantasy horror. And you can also find both of those at the Rainbow Roll Network. That is a network of actual play podcasts for and by queer, well, by queer people, for everyone, for the whole internet to see.
Okay.
And we like to run big charity events, like the upcoming Return of the Living Gays on Halloween. We had Night of the Living Gays last year.
That sounds hilarious.
It is. It is everyone in my network is an absolute delight. And speaking of charity, if you are at all intrigued by what we said at the top of the show about single player games, I run an annual bundle of single player TTRPGs called Solo But Not Alone, which raises money for suicide prevention. So if you are interested in playing single player RPGs, it usually launches in January and runs until the end of March. Or the beginning, it usually runs until March. And it's $10, and that $10 goes directly to a suicide prevention charity. And I have had designers from all over the world in these bundles. So there's gonna be something that tickles your fancy.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, thank you very much, Kat.
Yeah, and thank you. This was fun.
And thank you, viewers, for another one of Pat's chats. We'll have all the links available for this episode online whenever it comes up there, and we'll catch you next time.